Oh, welcome to Taylor's trick-taking table. I'm about to go to sleep. Good night, Somnia.
Hey, welcome to Taylor's trick-taking table. I'm Trick.
And I'm into some pretty dark, sad, and depressing things. Like when someone declares Trump and you don't have any Trump in your hand. Today, we'll be looking at a dark, depressing game about children trying to escape a nightmare. The game is called Somnia. It's by Kazuma Suzuki.
And the hook is, players are either trying to get the most points or the fewest points to try to escape the nightmare. It's a re-implementation of Mittler-Jas.
So let's go to the table, and I'll show you how to play.
No! Oh, sorry. I was having a nightmare. But I had an intro with really cheesy editing. It's okay. It's just a bad dream. Good night. The deck Insomnia is made up of 4 suits numbered 2 through 10. The 5s and 7s can go up in ranks to 11 and 12 if that suit becomes the trump suit, but we'll get into that during the gameplay teach. Here we have the game set up for 3 players, so each player is going to get 3 life tokens. You're going to put the box in the center of the table, which will help denote what the trump suit is, and then you'll shuffle the deck and deal out cards equally to the players. So at 3, each player is going to get 12 cards. The goal of the game is to not lose your 3 life chips. I'll explain how you would lose one later on, but for now let's get into the trick play. So it starts with the dealer's left. Let's say it's happy smiley face here. At the start of Somnia, it's a must-follow game. So let's say smiley face plays blue. That means the eyeball has to play a blue if they have one. So maybe they play their 2 blue. And then coming to the witch's finger here, they'll look at their cards and they also have a blue. They have this blue 5 here and they will play that to the trick. So the winner of the trick is the highest of the lead suit or highest of trump if trump is determined, which it hasn't yet. So they'll take the trick. In the rules it says keep any points face up, and we're not sure if that's going to be any points yet. These don't have any points, so we usually just discard any cards that don't have any points in them. Then, if you won the trick, you'll lead to the next trick. So the witch's finger led to the next trick with a 9 blue. The happy face followed suit with a 4 blue, but then coming to the eyeball's hand, they don't have any blue. Why this is important is because the first time anyone is off suit from the lead suit, the card they play will dictate what trump is. So if the eyeball played this 4 green, that would mean the green suit is going to be trump for this hand. So the eyeball will actually win this trick. And again, they'll take any points into their hand. And now's a good time to probably look at some of the cards. As you can see, the rank is up in the top here, but the point value is in a smaller, see if I can zoom in, a smaller section with the point, like the 5 here, inside this kind of castle creature. I'm not quite sure what it is. But so they will take those points and put it next to them. Now that the nightmare suit or the trump suit has been declared, the rules to the game kind of change a little bit in how you do the card play. So, for example, if a non-trump card was played, it's like this 5 white, players can either follow suit or they can now trump in if they want to. So even though the witch finger has this 2 white here, they could, if they wanted to, play this 2 green because they really wanted to win the trick. So coming to smiley face, they could again play this 10 white, or they could play into the trick trying to win the trick. The interesting thing though, if you do have white and you play trump into the trick when you could have played white, there's a rule where you always have to be winning. So for example here, let's say witch's finger actually played the 3 green. The smiley face couldn't play this 2 green. Because if you do have a white and you're just throwing off into the trick, you can't just throw a trump and lose. So they would have to play one of their higher trumps, meaning that if they could follow suit and they wanted to play a trump, they would always be winning. Hopefully not too confusing of a rule here. And also, there is a caveat. Let's say witch's finger led with trump. You don't have to be winning if it's led trump, because you're just following suit. So it's okay to play the 2 in this case, because you don't have to always be winning it if you're just following the lead suit. The final special rule with the card play when trump is declared is the highest card in the trump suit, which is now the 7, because as you can see on the 7, that when it becomes the trump suit, it actually isn't the 7 anymore, and it's not worth 2 points anymore. It becomes this kind of circled outline here, and it's now a 12, and it's worth 20 points. This is like that on all the 7s in the game, and the 5s in the game. So the 5 green is actually and 11 green now. The non-trump 5s and 7s still remain the same, so this yellow is a 5 and it's not worth any points. So as you can see over here, since this 5 isn't trump, this actually isn't worth any points. But the highest card in trump, you never have to play. So in this example, if it was lead trump and this is the witch's hand, they could play either of these 2 green trump cards. If they didn't have the 9 though, they wouldn't be forced to play this now 12 green trump card, because they can play it whenever they wanted. So they could play that 9 white, leading people to potentially think they don't have any trump or that they have the strongest trump. So with those wacky rules out of the way, the card play will just keep happening. Players will, win to the trick. They'll take and keep all the point cards in front of them face up. And why would players want or not want points in this game? At the end of a hand in Somnia, at least one person is going to lose a heart chip. It could be multiple people, it could be everyone. And it all depends on the player count and kind of a flow chart of what players are going for. At 3, I'm going to include the flow chart over here of who loses a heart and kind of what happens in the steps you walk through at the end of a hand. As you can see at the top here, the first thing you check is if anyone didn't win any tricks. If that happened, those player or players would lose a heart, and then the hand would just be over. You wouldn't go into counting points or anything else. That would just be what would happen for the hand. If that condition wasn't met, you'd move on to the second condition, which is if a player got 100 or more points, then only they would lose a heart. If those 2 things didn't happen, any players with equal amount of points would lose hearts. And then if none of that happens, the final thing to check is the player in second place right in the middle would lose a heart. So in this example here, everyone got a trick, no one took over 100, the eyeball got 15 points, smiley got 11, and witch got 0. So the smiley face, because they were in the middle here, would have lost a heart because no one was also equal. Then you collect the hand, reshuffle, and deal out and keep playing. The nightmare or the trump suit would reset, and you would play until someone loses their 3rd life. You can have ties, so if these 2 players both had 3 hearts left, they would tie and win. So that's how to play Somnia, especially at 3. At 4, you have a different flowchart, which I'll put right here. There's a few more caveats, but essentially, at the end of it all, you're just trying not to be in the middle again, so 2nd or 3rd. So that is Somnia, and I love this game, because what it does is it pits players against each other almost immediately. So you're trying to either, generally, be the highest or the lowest. You just don't want to be in the middle. And what it does is, after the first few tricks, those roles are settled almost for the players. If someone's won, 20 points by the first few tricks, they're obviously trying to get the most points. And then you have either the players who didn't, trying to be the sluffers, or maybe there's one person who thinks they have a really good hand, so then they start trying to catch that person who already got the points. And what's great is the hand always starts off with following suit, and there's no trump. So players aren't 100% sure if their hands are super good or not. And you can't quite do a ton to see if your hand is going to be full of trump, because you just kind of have to follow suit. So the person who leads to the trick is almost like, well, I know this suit isn't going to be trump. And the decision is so interesting from the get-go. I honestly don't think the hands are ever boring. They have just such a beautiful pace to it, especially as it kind of crescendos to the end. And I know, again, the scoring's a little flowcharty. If I had to pick like a con, that definitely would be it. Especially if you're playing at 3 or 4, it's like you're learning a different flowchart, which is a necessity, but you definitely have to do that if you're switching the player counts. But it leads to so much choice and so much kind of excitement as you barrel towards the end of a hand. Hey, future editor, short hair Taylor here. I do want to say another con that I remembered, but I forgot to mention while I was filming, was that there is a shifting of the suits that is a little tough to teach and remember. And I think it's just because I'm not used to games like Euchre, where certain cards can be promoted. So if you're used to that, I don't think it's really bad at all. I think the graphic design on the cards kind of helps keep that clear, so not the worst. But the other thing, and I don't really know why this is, but the fact that when you offsuit trump, you have to be winning. You can't kind of offsuit trump and slough. It might be there for a reason, but it just felt like a weird fiddly rule and kind of an edge case that it never happened when we played, and it kind of just seems like it doesn't really happen too often So I wonder why it's even in there. Maybe in the comments someone can say. But other than that, back to me in the past telling you how much I love this game. I love setting the scene in this game with like kind of an example. So say someone has like 40 points and they're the only one with points. Do they start sluffing right now and try to make someone else try to catch them? But not too soon because they don't want to be caught, right? They still want to have the most. And then everyone else, they haven't taken points yet. So do they keep sloughing? But someone has a pretty good hand because Trump got broken and they were pretty sure they're going to get a lot of points. So they are wondering, can I keep sloughing for this long? When do I start trying to get as many points as I can? And there's an interesting push and pull where in the middle of a hand, you can always see who's competing for what role. I don't think this game has ever led to moments where there's always someone who isn't fighting another person. And whether you're on the sidelines hoping that doesn't turn on you, or whether you, at a 4-player game, are fighting the other person, there's always this tension every trick to kind of make sure the points get doled out in interesting ways. I love when someone also just takes a ton of points, so they're pretty much guaranteed to be the highest point person, but then everyone realizes that and then they just start sloughing that person a ton of points, so then they overshoot and make it so only they lose a life. There's a lot of flowcharty scoring, but I do think all the situations in the scoring lead for really fun moments and kind of decisions on how players move around points. The way that Trump is determined is so fascinating. Like, not only does it use the game box, which I think is a loving touch, but it gets to a point where it could happen so late in the hand, some players don't know whether the 5s or the 7s that they're holding on are going to be super important. And the 7 is so brilliant that you don't have to play it, because it's worth 20 points. It's kind of an insane thing. And when the Trump gets broken, which I love, and that person who was holding that 20-point card was hoping not to take any points, and then they realize, oh, I'm now in the thick of this point battle and I have to start getting points. I love when it like switches for them. There's so many funny kind of moments in this game where you're trying to keep track of what everyone has, and it's nice that it's face up. I think it's important that it's face up. It'd be a little bit too hard to track. But you're trying to keep track of what everyone has and the pace they're getting points at as well, to try to gauge, are they trying to get the most? Or are they just trying to get a few and then still try to get the least? I think the scoring's nice. I've talked before about the idea of having like one loser or like multiple winners. But this game kind of does a good balancing of it. Like, the game ends when someone loses their 3 lives, but it still matters whoever has the most lives. And I think there's more ties in this game than the average trick taker, because out of 3 lives, the winning players will usually have like 2 or 3 or something. And I don't mind it. I kind of like ties in trick taking games because it's just, in my mind, meant to be just fun anyway. So it's kind of nice to have kind of a loose scoring that's more like heat of the moment. It's tough to lose a life, but like in the end, it's like, I like the production. I think the art's nice, although the theme, especially this ghost, is a little creepy, kids and nightmares. But again, the fact that they use the box is a really nice touch, and love these little heart tokens. So that is Somnia, and even though the scoring is a little flowcharty, it totally makes sense once you're into it and get the hooks of what players should be going for, or kind of the battles that can ensue. And again, just from the get-go, every hand starts quick, is super fascinating, has that mid-twist of what Trump is, and then ends with such a battle as players are trying to get the most, or trying to keep sloughing, get the least, and everyone's kind of at odds with each other from the start all the way to the finish of a hand. The hand just has such an amazing arc. I absolutely love this game, so I'm totally going to give it the seal. And thanks so much for watching.